fishing, it's in my soul.
Welcome to the Salt Strong Podcast, disrupting fishing entertainment as you know it. Prepare to laugh. Prepare to get to know fishing legends in a whole new and unfiltered way. And on occasion, you might even learn a thing or two about fishing. Here's your host, Joe Simons. Like diamonds.
Money over your spouse. Oh boy, this is going to be an exciting one. Hey everybody, Joe Simons, Like Diamonds, back again, Salt Strong Unchurched. It's funny how God sends us these messages and puts us in front of the right messages and the right people at the time we need to hear it. For whatever reason, I am getting, just flooded with different messages about money, and even some of the Bible verses I've been reading randomly go back to money and being generous. And thankfully I have been. I feel like I'm being called to give more, but it is really wild. The whole Hobby Lobby, if you listen to that episode, just a couple ago about, how generous they were with their money and giving away 50% of their profits. To me, that seems inconceivable. Obviously, we're all at a different phase in our company. We're only 7 years old and spent the first couple of years like making no money, just putting money in. Hundreds of thousands of dollars of our savings had to go into it. And we're still getting to the point where, kind of scraping some of that back. So to us, like to give away 50% of the profits of what's left over, it seems inconceivable, but we're starting to give back, a decent amount, definitely not 50%. And I still feel like we're called to give more. And I talked about in the last episode with that almost a billionaire who at the end of his life, this book was kind of the last thing that he had written. His name was Felix. And, the book was called How to Get Rich. And at the very end, he basically says, I haven't met a rich, happy person yet. And he goes, and honestly, I'm not. And it was hard hitting. If you haven't heard that one and you're even somewhat struggling with money or really excited to just get more, I would listen to that. That was just incredibly powerful. He said, here I am, worth, it was like $900 million at the time of him writing that book. And he's like, I'm not happy. He's like, the only thing that gives me happiness is walking in the woods by myself and basically talking to God, feeding a stray cat, gardening, writing poetry, and having wine with my friends. And he's like, every one of those, except for the bottle of wine, does not cost any money, right? Think about it. Walking through the woods, a poor person can do that. It's free to walk in the woods, assuming you're able to walk. And gardening, doesn't cost that much. It depends on if you already have a garden or not, but writing poetry, certainly free. Maybe the cost of a pencil and a piece of paper, and feeding a stray cat just some scrap food, that doesn't cost anything. You don't have to be rich to do any of these, is my point. Most of them are almost free. And then, just sitting around and talking with friends, maybe over a bottle of wine, $20 for the bottle of wine. None of that requires you to be a millionaire. None of it requires you to even have much wealth at all, right? And he's like, the irony, he's like, this guy spent the majority of his life just accumulating wealth and never found a point where he was happy because, like a lot of us, we get obsessed with having more of it. And then all of a sudden you get at the next level and you see all these other wealthy people and you're like, oh my gosh, there's a whole nother level above me. And then you want to strive to get that. And at each level you find that you're not happy. And what was interesting, he talked about in the book, he's like, man, all of these people, some are friends, some are more just friends because we're in the same circles of wealthy people, but none of them that I know seem to truly be happy. And most of them are either divorced or divorced many times over and or currently cheating on their spouse and also not happy in their relationships. And man, that was just powerful. And so I bring it all back to the topic here is I was at this conference. It's a C12, that's a Christian group that I'm a part of, and we had a day of unity and brought in all of the C12 members, people like myself. So these are different CEOs and leaders of companies all over Central Florida. Basically from Tampa and Bradenton, Sarasota, all the way over to Daytona Beach. The whole kind of center part of Florida all came and just got to share and talk about best practices and stories. And one of the speakers, his name's Chris, and his wife came up, and he's got a couple $100 million a year business, and obviously super successful. And he's kind of telling the story of some stuff that happened to them personally, and then starts going into the business part. And then he showed a picture of his whole team, and this is the point. They were doing essentially like $180-200 million a year, and like, shouldn't that be an exciting time, right? To be able to take a company from 50 million to 100 million to 200 million dollars, which is what he did. And he's like, I wish I could tell you that this is the end of the story, that I was happy in this picture. And then his wife came and started speaking. He's like, yeah, I mean, this was the point where we were at like our lowest low in a relationship. And she's like, I didn't feel like he loved me. We didn't talk much. I mean, his love was work. That's all he did, was focus on this big goal of them hitting $200 million. And she's like, I kind of felt like I lost my husband, but she's like, I prayed over it. And she's like, God told me just to stop worrying about him. You're not going to change him. This is it. Let me change his heart. And that was the message she got from God one day. She's like, lay off him. Let me change his heart. I've got this. And as soon as she did that, Chris now tells the story. It's like, yeah, God started working on me. Like, all of a sudden I've just got ridden with guilt and all these different, emotions of knowing that he went from being like, oh yeah, this is just who I am. Right. And I was like, most of the room was tearing up. I'm not doing the best job of selling this story because I didn't live it, but there wasn't a dry eye in the place. And so we're all tearing up because we've all done that. We've all been like, well, honey, that's just who I am, right? I'm a workaholic, or I love working so much, or I love doing anything, or a hobby. It could be a lot of different things. It doesn't have to just be work. For a lot of us guys, especially, it seems to be that we get so in love with the work and the challenge and then the money part of it, and then accumulating wealth and all the stuff I mentioned earlier about getting to the next level. And then you kind of want more, and you never really truly seem satisfied. And many times you do that at the expense of your relationships, and in particular spouses and kids. And that was kind of his attitude, is, hey, like And this hit hard for me because I've had the same attitude. I've said the same stuff. I'm like, hey, I'm working so hard, and I get, it's easy to get defensive. Like, babe, I'm working so hard because I'm putting money on the table. I'm putting bread on the table, right? I'm paying for all this stuff. I'm paying for this nice house and your car and all that, right? I mean, we get that attitude pretty quickly, and like, this is just the way it is. If you guys want nice stuff and we want our kids to go to this nice Christian school, like, I got to work this hard, and that may or may not be true. I don't know. What I do know is if you're sacrificing, or if I'm sacrificing this to the detriment of my relationship with my wife and my kids, is it really worth it? And to me, it's an easy answer. It's no. But I don't know. It took me, and it took God just putting that right message, and I think in front of a lot of us, because there was a lot of people tearing up when they're telling this story. And he's like, I literally almost lost my wife and my kids who when mom was like, hey, let's all get together and do this, fun thing on a Thursday night. And the kids would immediately say, well, dad's not going to come. He's over there in his office on his computer. And that hit hard because I've heard my kids say that about me in the past. I'm like, oh my gosh. Have you guys ever heard that before? And I'm like, oh yeah, dad's in front of his computer, or mom's in front of her tablet, or she's on the phone, doing business. When kids pick up on that, it's probably a time you might want to slow down, maybe say some apologies, and maybe just look at giving a little bit more open time and open space, for your family. I'm not saying you should quit your job, and because we did have a gentleman who's part of our group at one point said that. He's like, man, I feel like I'm such a workaholic. I just need to sell the company and just spend all the time with my family. And we all kind of looked at him and we're like, is that really going to solve the problem? And do your kids really want to, or your wife, they don't really want 10 hours of you a day? Like, that's a little bit overkill, right? I mean, let's just be honest, right? We don't really want that. They just want your undivided attention. They want you to be present, right, when you are around. And I think that was a big takeaway because for me, especially, I get so into something. And then all of a sudden, my wife or one of the kids do come up. And a lot of times I do work from home, which has been a huge benefit. But they ask something and I'm like, yeah, kind of, why not even looking at them? Why still looking at my screen? Because I'm in the middle of something. And I think that's the biggest thing for me that I've got to work on is just being present. And that's what the wife had said. She's like, he just wasn't present. She's like, I saw him. It wasn't like he traveled every day. He was home the majority of evenings, but he just wasn't present. He would have the phone strapped to him at the dinner table. He'd have to leave. He wasn't present. And I know if my wife was joining me right now, maybe I should have her at some point. Let me just try to, really get my relationship up to a 10 out of 10 first. But you know what I'm saying? If I had her on here, I guarantee she would say, yeah, like there's just so many nights where I could tell Joe has so much on his mind and he's just not present and he's just thinking about work. And gosh, after you hear about the people on their deathbed and any regrets they had, it's never around, oh, I wish I had returned more emails at the dinner table, or I wish I had taken more of those calls at dinner table, or I wish I'd closed bigger deals, right? Or I wish I'd gotten that one job promotion. None of them even come close to that. It's all about, I wish I had spent more quality time being present with my loved ones. I wish I had spent more time building up relationships. I wish I had spent more time, taking chances and doing things that were truly fun versus working so hard just to accumulate all this money and stuff in hopes that you have a spouse who's still around and you have kids who still like you and love you, that you get to even enjoy it, right? And it's such a sad travesty that so many of us, including yours truly, get caught up in that of that, oh yeah, I'll date my wife more often when this happens, when I make this amount of money, or when I have this size of a team built up and I can finally take, a day off, or we'll take that family vacation at some point, once I've got that job promotion or once this happens. And it's a slippery slope to keep always saying, I'll do that when, if the I'll do that is focusing on a relationship, especially a spouse. And this conversation or this, speech, if you will, from this couple, Chris and Robin, it hit so hard and so timely. And you could even though this happened quite a few years ago to them, you could still see some of the pain and the hurt. They were both crying. It was so emotional because it was so powerful and it was so real, and we could all see ourselves in them. We could all put ourselves in their shoes because these were, high achieving and, kind of get stuff done CEOs and executives in this room. And I felt like almost every one of us could just not only relate, but like it was hitting home hard. And so I'm hoping this hits the right people. I pray before every single episode, it's like, God, just speak through me, one, and let me reach the right people. And so if this is you and you're hearing this and this is resonating at all, or maybe you're seeing this in your own spouse, maybe it's one of your kids or maybe your parents, that you're like, yeah, I wish my mom or dad, or I wish my son or daughter could hear this and just know that this jobs and the stuff they're doing, it is important, but it's not that important when you compare it to relationships. And that's why I had this thing titled the way I did. It's like, all right, and that was his question. He finally kind of had to like just break the chains off of this and say, all right, I've either got to pick money in my career and grow in this thing, or I got to pick my wife. And that doesn't mean you got to get rid of one. He obviously didn't get just rid of it. He's still very involved in the company, but he's like, it can't own me. It just can't. It's not that important. And the irony is when he finally made that decision to just love on his wife, and that, once again, that does not mean 8 hours a day, but just to put her first, right? To make sure that he is completely present and is loving her and dating her, just doing the small stuff, not dating her every day, but a couple times a month is better than all of a sudden 3 months go by or a year. And you're like, man, I haven't taken my spouse on a date in a year. That's a problem. I mean, it's a massive problem. And it's so easy to happen when you get focused on careers and just all the craziness in life. I mean, ask me how I know. I remember looking at one time, like, man, we haven't been on a date in a couple months. And now we're very good about doing it, not every week, but we try to do it every other week or so to have some date, even if it's with another couple. Doesn't always even have to be one-on-one. But he said, as soon as I started doing that, as soon as I really just apologized to her and says, you have my word. I am going to put you first. I'm going to be present around you. I am going to be present at dinner. I am going to be present in all the stuff that we do, and just absolutely work on our relationship. He did take a little less time off of being in the office and on work. And guess what happened? God started growing it, and it's now grown since he's not been that involved. Once again, still very involved, but you see where I'm going with this is, and his point was like, and there's quotes on this in the Bible that, I mean, God does reward you when you are focused on your relationships and being generous and kind with your time and your money and your love. And there's even, a part in the Bible. Don't ask me, I'm not a biblical scholar, but I know I've read all this after reading the Bible so many times, where it talks about God doesn't even answer your prayers the way you want if you're not loving your spouse. It's basically, there is a part of there that if you're not giving all to your spouse, meaning all of your time, your love and attention, God is not going to answer the prayers that you the way you want him to. I mean, it's fascinating stuff. And their whole story was just absolute proof that everything I'm saying about this is true. And so once again, if this resonates at all, I'm hoping it hits the right people, and this message is timely, just like it was for me hearing Chris and his wife share their testimony. Step number 2 is just to do something about it, right? And guess what I did? The second after that was over, and I've wiped my tears away, I sent my wife a text. I got home and just told her, hey, I haven't given you my best. And you've got my word that I'm never going to be perfect. We're always working on ourselves. So you want to make sure that you're not going to say, oh yeah, we're going to do a date night every single night. Start small and just, at least I think just the apology alone, and just the fact of saying, you know what, I haven't been as present as I should. I haven't been as loving as I should. I haven't put you first in every single scenario. There's been times I've put business stuff first, and I want to put an end to that, and know that I'm going to be working on it. I want you to call me out when I'm not, because that's also seemed to be part of the story. Is a lot of spouses at first say something and then they just kind of ignore it, and then it just becomes part of who they are. And I do believe that's why so many people get divorced after, like, the kids have left, is they've ignored all these small little subtle things for so long, and it's just become what it is, and you don't see any way it could ever get back to where it should be, right? And it's sad. The good news is it is repairable. At least for most people, it is repairable as long as both parties are willing to let it repair. It does take some time, and it does take some apologies, and it takes 2 adults being wide open to that. But gosh, just the amount of my friends that I've seen go through the nasty divorces, you just don't want to wish that on anybody. And I understand it does happen, but I'm pretty sure if you interviewed most people who've been divorced, if they could have done it differently to avoid it, they would probably have said, yeah, I would have. And there would have been a way around it. For some of us, maybe it was a blessing. I personally have not had to go through that. I hope I never do. And it's another reason I do these podcasts for myself, right? I want to hold myself accountable and have my wife hold me accountable for the stuff I'm talking about that I'm sharing with you. So I hope this is helpful. Love you guys. Give some love to your spouses, or to anyone who you think might need to hear this. And if you have any questions or thoughts or things that have helped you out with this in building just stronger relationships, let me know. My email, joe@saltstrong.com. Talk to you on the next episode.
'Cause fishing, it's in my soul, it was pain.